Welcome to Which Side Do You Want, where we talk all things tennis. I'm your co-host, Ruffin Thornton, and I'll be joined by my good friend, James Skinner.
Unlike most tennis podcasts, we cover hot topics, from the lawns to the concrete, from the pros to the park, and all things in between. Welcome to Which Side Do You Want?
Welcome back, tennis and racket sport fans, to our podcast. We are back for our fifth season in 2025, albeit a little bit late, but we're back, and we're glad to have you back with us listening to our podcast. So, with no further ado, Coach, how you been? How you doing in 2025?
Doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing great.
We're here.
We're here.
That's the important thing.
Right. So how's the so this year, this is your second year coaching. How's the team going so far?
Well, we have first day tryouts today.
Right.
And but luckily I don't have so many players. So
Right.
I think everybody that comes out on the team will find a spot for them.
Okay.
Now, whether or not they play in the starting lineup, that's up to them, but
Right.
and the hard work. But so far, we got a good day, beautiful weather today, and looking forward to the season.
Okay, cool. Well, let's not dilly-dally. Let's go ahead and get the podcast started. So it's a little bit late. It's February now. So we missed the main tournament of the year, or at least the first big tournament of the year, the Australian Open. So let's start out with them. We want to acknowledge, yes, the Australian Open winners. On the women's side, we want to acknowledge Madison Keys. Congratulations to Madison for winning her first Grand Slam. So proud of Madison.
Yeah, great
She
win.
defeated Arna Sabalenka, current number one player in the world. And on the men's side, we want to tip our hats to Jannik Sinner, who took out a very game Alexander Zverev.
Yes.
But let's talk about Jannik Sinner. So Jannik, if you'll notice, by the time of this recording, Jannik is not currently playing because he has been suspended for 3 months because of taking a banned substance. Clobestol, I believe, was the substance. So, but, you know, he and his team were able to, I guess, successfully suspend or push that suspension date back. In fact, at one point, he wasn't going to serve a day for that suspension at all. And then the WADA, which happens to be the World Anti-Doping Agency, came back and they appealed or reversed the results from the ITIA, two different governing bodies, to say, hey, Jannik should have that 2-year ban, and they got it down to 3 months, which he decided to take right after the Australian Open, and it's long enough to where he still won't miss the next Grand Slam, which will be the French Open. He'll come back right before the French Open tournaments on his home tournament, the Italian Open on clay. So let's talk about that. Do you think that's fair, especially when it's been said by notable pros, Nick Kyrgios, Novak Djokovic, and others, that some players seem to get favorable treatment where the rank and file don't? What do you think?
Yeah, that's true. They do. I think it's a bad look for tennis, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
3 months.
3
Really?
months. I know.
He accepted 3 months. And for him to accept, they would have had to offer. So They offered him 3 months, and he made the deal. And now let me go back on record. We've talked about this before.
We did talk about that.
Sinner as a player, and as I don't know him personally,
Right.
but just from the type of person I've seen that on the court and his interviews and everything, I don't think he doesn't seem like the type of person that would want to cheat to win.
Right.
I think he sincerely puts all his effort and energies into being the best tennis player he can be, and he has a good team behind him that helps him continue that. So I don't think he was trying to do anything deceitful or.
Yeah, and I guess most tennis players are like that as well.
Right.
They don't want to be considered a cheat.
Right.
Go ahead.
No. So I don't think so. However, so I'm saying that. However, I think the whole idea that WADA has made some type of agreement or deal, it's a bad look for the game. And is it fair? No, it's not fair.
No.
But Jannik Sinner is the #1 tennis player in the world.
Right.
And because
Put butts in seats.
he puts butts in seats, and he makes money for tournaments and programs and sponsors and everybody else. So it's big. It's a business.
Yeah.
Okay. It's entertainment, it's sport, but it's also a business. And so he was given. I think without question he was given, a sweetheart deal. Because he is the #1 tennis player in the world.
Yeah.
If he was 1,001, they'd have booted him out in a heartbeat and wouldn't have thought two things about it. And so just the whole idea that there's like an agreement and that they it's almost like there was like a back room, kind of has a shady look to it to me, and it doesn't look good for the sport. And but also too, just the whole thing when he was initially tested, because he'd been tested and he tested negative a couple of times, I think, wasn't he?
Right. He was given
years ago, last year he was tested.
So in this instance, the way I understand it, he tested positive not once but twice.
Right.
So he two different urine samples.
He tested positive
between March 10th and March 18th. The substance supposedly came through from his physio, who was giving him a massage, who had a cut on his hand.
Man.
I mean, I know it sounds bad, but at the end of the day, it's not like he ingested or took anything. It came from
but it was in his
physio.
system.
It was in his system.
They usually don't ask questions about how you got it in your system. It's the fact that you have it. And now you come up with your defense. And we talked, once again, we've talked about this before, but I'm just saying that excuse he came up with, it's like somebody sat down and they said, okay, this is what we're going to say to cover all bases. So we're going to say that this is what happened, that your trainer had a cut and he had this ointment or something on his finger to prevent the cut, and that he's massaging you and you just happen to look up and say, hey, did you put a Band-Aid on that cut? And of course he forgot, or it fell off and he didn't know it. And it was all so contrived. And I think it was contrived for a reason, because they wanted them to have a plausible excuse for why this was in his system.
Well, that goes against what you just said, because you said that you didn't think that Sinner was that type of player that would cheat.
That doesn't go against what I'm saying. It doesn't condemn Sinner. I'm saying they told him. I'm saying Sinner himself did not. I don't think he set this up. I think what happened was this was in his system, however it got in there, and they said this is what we need to tell people, and he went along with it. Now, I don't think he would ingest or take anything in his system. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that the excuse that they came up with as to how it got in his system seemed to me contrived.
Okay, without throwing stones at anyone, I'm just saying,
no, not at all. I'm just saying,
it is plausible, and that's what the ITIA came up with. They thought it was plausible because the amount of, I guess, when you look at the results, the amount of the sample that was found, of the substance that was found in his urine, was of such low quantities that sounds plausible. And again, we're not here to investigate or put this back on trial. We're just trying to say, is it fair? And at the end of the day, no, because there's a Brazilian player who's ranked 485 in the world. His name is Nicolas Zaniolato, and he tested positive for boldenone, and another anabolic steroid that he says, because in Brazil, well, he was doing a tournament, a challenger tournament, so it's low level in Colombia in June of 2024, and he says he didn't do anything, what you would say, on purpose. He may have gotten this anabolic steroid from contaminated meat, which is prominent in Colombia, but he didn't know about it.
Right.
So now again, it occurred, he was suspended in June. The board, the ITIA, just came back and said, hey, it's plausible, but he had to go through the work. Now, like you're saying, Sinner has resources. Sinner has a team, whereas this player who's only had $45,000 of career winnings, through a career.
Yeah.
he had to do all that legwork, all that work on his own. So
Right.
at the end of the day, it's not fair. You look at not only Yannick, Iga Swiatek only did 1 month for multiple banned substances that were found in her system,
Right.
and it was while she was out of competition, but it was what was it? I forgot what it was. It was a sleep medication because that's one of the pitfalls of being a world-class tennis player. You have to travel, and she was having issues with falling asleep. So she took something that was only in her country that had a banned substance. Okay, so she gets the 1 month suspension. But it's ridiculous. At the end of the day, the whole transparency thing between WADA, between the ITIA, it's not clear. It's not transparent. It seems like it's favoritism to the greatest players, but not so much to the rank and file. Even Jakob Mensik was given a doping test during a match because they didn't realize that the match was split and they were going into a third set.
Right.
So it's not really fair. So that's what we come up with at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But
hey, they test these people all the time, and your trainers and all these people, they should be educated, and most of them are.
Right.
But it does happen, and they're so hypersensitive to any type of thing. And of course, I understand why. You don't want anybody to have an advantage because of something that they ingested in their system. And I can understand if you see a guy and he's like skinny one day and all of a sudden he's, packed on, he's long cut. Okay, then there's reason to be suspicious of this person. And so I understand the reason for it, the testing, but we can't ignore the fact that if you're a top earner in this league, you're going to get perks. And primarily, male players get a little more leeway, I think, than women because they came,
because what happened to Simona Halep, whether it was right or wrong, she was labeled as a cheat, which is unfair.
Her career. Let's understand it ended her career,
right?
Where she would never obtain the level of success or of the ranking that she had before that. Sharapova,
true,
kind of hit her hard. I mean, she never really rebounded from her situation.
But the Sharapova story, she went back to her home country from Russia. From a doctor when she's been in this country for a number of years. But that's a sidebar altogether. That's a funny story as well. So, but at the end of the day, we both agree it's unfair that the top players get preferential treatment, whereas the rank and file don't have the same ability to hinder or squash a suspension like the top players.
Exactly. And then just one last thing. I mean, we understand this, unfortunately, and we all accept it because if you're higher up, you get a few breaks. And like you said before, I mean, he puts butts in the seats.
Right.
He is the number one player, and there's a whole lot of money going into him performing at the highest level, and people want to see him. And if they suspended him for a year, like he could have been,
or two,
it would have caused a furor. It would have been, it would have been bad.
It probably would have. But again, it's a bad look either way.
Yeah. It's like the go back to the whole, even though it's kind of on a slightly different, but Djokovic, with the vaccine thing. I mean, it, not being vaccinated when right at the height of our pandemic, and it was, it was tricky, and we talked about that too. I mean, he made a decision not to get injected, but it was a furor over that. It's like, should he play? Well, I always said, I get it. He should have a right not to get vaccinated if he didn't want to. Fine, but the tournament had a right, and the country of Australia had a right to keep him out of their country if this is part of their protocol.
And same with the U.S.
Yeah, same with the U.S. And the thing is, I always go back, Nadal. I think it was Nadal. He's like, look, we all knew this. We all took those shots to play, and so, but eventually he was out 1 year, and he comes back the next, and people kind of expected he was going to be back. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I can go with that.
Because he was the Joker.
He's the Joker. So, with that said, let's talk about some upcoming tournaments. So we know, and I'm happy to say this, the next major event, the last one was the Australian Open, but the next major event, we're getting into what we call the Sunshine Doubles.
Yep.
Indian Wells in the United States and the Miami Open in Miami are the next two major events. They're Master 1000s where both men and women top players are going to be invited to the tournament. And I'm happy to say that I'm going to be there. So look out for some more exciting commentary about the Indian Wells. But I'd like to talk about not only the top players that are going to be at this year's Indian Wells, which will not have Yannick Sinner, but there's some notables like, for instance, the top players are always given those entries, but the wild cards are, this is what's interesting. So on the men's side, you've got Yao, I'm mispronouncing it, Fonseca. He won the next gen on the young men's side, as well as Learn Tien, who we beat in the next gen. Both of them had really good Australian Opens. I think Fonseca won a tournament, his first tournament down in South America just recently. So they're going to get direct wild card entries into the Indian Wells, which is also fun to see those players get that opportunity.
Right.
So on the women's side, you're going to get two notable players, two former two Grand Slam winners in Petra Kvitova. She's coming back from a 15-month stance where she gave birth to her first child. And Venus Williams, who unfortunately, as of this recording, has decided, even though she was given the wild card, has decided not to participate.
Right.
In fact, from what we understand, she says that she had no intention of playing it because she didn't know about it.
Yeah.
She didn't know about the wild card.
Right. Well.
But that's interesting. But I just want to say that who are your favorites for Indian Wells?
Yeah, that's a good question. On the women's side, you have a lot of people. I'm looking at who's real hot right now. You got to look at players like Von Joseva.
Okay, on the women's side.
Yeah. Also, I'm trying to think of the Czech player that just who is really doing very well. Who's come up, and these tournaments, they come with these players who are red hot,
right.
Coming off Australia, and they get there and get in a run. It's like a Grand Slam type type tournament. So
right.
it's gonna take on, for 2 weeks, and you have to play it out. And the courts, it's in the sun, and it's the courts are hard and fast. And players like those courts. Most players like the clay quarters, the dirt ballers are not as happy, but they've been some who have performed well out there.
I mean, they construct points.
Right. Will Sabalenka come through? I think you have to make her the favorite. Also, on the women's side, you can't count out golf. For Americans, I think she's done well. This young girl, Towson, Towson.
Yeah, Towson.
I mean, big hitter, plays a big game. Quinyan Jin, the Chinese, you can't count her out. This is tailor-made for her style game. Right. Big serve, big forehand. Then you have these players that could slide in that that on the back end, you have, of course, Madison Keys. If she's rested up and healthy, she could have a good run there in the tournament.
We're looking forward to seeing
Madison. Definitely see how she follows up her, her Australian victory. They're definitely a lot of. I think it's wide open. I don't think there's a clear favorite. I think there are a lot of women who, they get on a run. They can take that title,
right? Okay.
And I think we'll have a new champion this year. I don't think there'll be a repeat. I think we'll have a new champion. So we shall see.
Yeah, and like you said on the women's side, on the men's side, the field is wide open. Of course, Yannick's not there, but the defending champion Alcaraz, he'll be back. He has the opportunity to be a 3-time Masters 1000 winner at the same event. You can't count out any of the other top players. Novak's coming back. You've got Tsitsipas, who's done well early in the season. You've got Medvedev and Ruud and a lot of other, all the top American players. Fritz, who's also won it. Tommy Paul, Ben Shelton, and our big guy from France.
Oh, yeah.
Picardi.
Oh, you talking Pericard?
Pericard. I can't get it.
Oh, yeah. Giovanni
Pericard.
With the cannon serve,
he could surprise a lot of people. So the tournament might be wide open. You've got a lot of players who, on the men's side, can just get hot. Shapovalov has been playing well. FAA has been playing well. So and Rublev just won a tournament.
Rublev has come making a resurgence.
You wide open, and we don't know who's going to be the favorite, especially since Yannick is out.
And another dark horse is the Czech player Lehečka.
Yeah.
I mean, he lost a tough one to Alcaraz. That match was incredible.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's a player out there who's full of confidence.
Yep.
But he's like 23 years old, so he's young at the beginning of his career, and he hits the ball a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, and not intimidated. Those are always the things you look for in the younger players when they go on that court. Are they intimidated by the environment? Are they intimidated by the opponent, the moment? And when they're not, when you see them and they're like not shaking, they go out on the court intending, expecting to win. Yeah. Those are things that let you know, okay, this is one of those, one of those persons who could definitely win a title.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be wide open. Also, we even talked about Taylor Fritz, who could, he's a champion, a former champion. So, and definitely like to see Americans do well.
Yeah, we always want to see them do well.
Tommy Paul, man, Tommy Paul's due for a breakthrough. I think he's due for a breakthrough, and he has a type of game. I mean, we could see him do it at one of the Sunshine doubles tournaments, not doubles tournaments, but the
Sunshine doubles. Yeah.
And he could get a run,
right,
and do well, because he's another one. I mean, he's been out there, he's experienced, veteran player. He's been in the ups and downs, and right now he's kind of putting everything together as far as his game is concerned. And I'd like to see Big Foe, man. If Big Foe is, if he comes in, he's got his mind together and he's ready to compete again, and I think he will be. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, since we mentioned Venus getting that wild card but not accepting it, it kind of brings you to mind to the end of February. Venus has been, for today's generation, one of the most visible and admired Black female athletes in the world.
Yes.
But before Venus, before Serena, there was another pioneering female athlete that we need to acknowledge, especially during the month of Black History Month. And that person is Althea Gibson.
Yep.
So can you say a couple of things about Althea that we can talk about?
Can we say a couple? Can we say a million things about this?
We could do a whole series on Althea.
Yeah. But definitely, I think trailblazer is something that you need to tack on the end of her name. This young woman who, African-American woman, changed the sport on many levels. And people, connect her, make her like the Jackie Robinson of the sport. And she is on some level. Unfortunately, she came and did what she did, and it still took another, 10 to 15 years before we get the emergence of another African-American into the game.
It was like 40 years before we saw another female.
Female, but I'm saying another African-American period. Yeah,
right.
And
on
then
the world stage.
You're right, for another female. Oh, yeah, exactly. And so, born in South Carolina,
Right.
I think she was a daughter of sharecroppers, I think, up in there. And then they moved to New
Do you
York.
know? So she was born in Silver, South Carolina.
Yeah,
I've been
Silver,
looking
South
on the map. I
Carolina.
don't know where that is.
Yeah,
I know where it's close to, but
Right.
it's interesting. But go ahead.
So she was, I think she was born in 1927 or something like that.
Right.
Right. Right in the midst of the Depression. And so opportunities for African Americans in that area of the South, poor. You were probably working on a farm somewhere, and I think like I said, I think her parents were sharecroppers or to connect, and they moved to New York through the Great Migration. A lot of people, African Americans moved, and so she, the one thing they did in New York, they had these little sports zones, and you go in the neighborhoods to, for the kids to have something to do, and they had basketball and all kinds of little games, but they also had paddle tennis.
Right.
And one day, somebody comes from one of the clubs and they see this little girl playing paddle tennis. And hey, maybe this girl we can get her to play tennis.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And she was developed under the tutelage of many people. Robert Whirlwind Johnson was one of them.
Who we've talked about.
Yes, we've talked about.
We've had her granddaughter on the podcast before.
Yes, I mean, she would come to Lynchburg, like all of the prominent black tennis players at the time would come to Lynchburg and work out on his home court to develop their skills and to compete. And so what we owe her, or what the sport owes her, is that she allowed others to realize that this game is not just a rich sport for rich white people.
Right.
It's sport for everyone that everyone can enjoy. And she brought so many people into the game and inspired so many people to want to take up the game and play.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
So if you look, there's an interview that Billie Jean King actually was given about Althea, and she says of all of the players that inspired her the most, it was Althea.
Yeah.
That's surprising. Billie Jean King, who we have a whole complex here in the States named after her, the person that she admired the most and inspired her to play the sport was Althea, which is interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I think that's apropos because she was a fighter too. Billie Jean King was a fighter who, although she wasn't African American, but she grew up working class. Right. And she also had to break into that thing because it was more just race. It was class also, in that this was a rich country club sport. And here she comes, the daughter of working class people in California, and she's hitting that ball too. And so I guess I could see that. I could see her being a role model. And just meant so much. She inspired so many people to grow this game, and growing the growth of this game. And I think there are not a lot of people, especially like our age. We weren't around to see her play. Okay, you and I, we were below, so we never got a chance to see her play as a tennis player. We just knew of her legacy. We saw Arthur Ashe play, who was the next step, connection into that.
Again, another Whirlwind Johnson prodigy, who was coached by, who helped Arthur as well.
Yep, exactly. Help Arthur Ashe. And, also, like I said, Sidney Llewellyn. And so you had these little networks around the country where they would go. They go to Chicago and work out with him. They come to Lynchburg and work out with Whirlwind Johnson. And the goal was always the same. They were looking for champions who could compete at the highest level. And so it's just like you go in steps. And so you get to this first step and then the next step. And then finally you get someone who could break into the ranks of the upper echelons of the sport.
And once she was given the opportunity, because she got her first chance after, like you said, once she progressed further and further and further, and she could show that she could compete, she was finally given the opportunity in 1950 to compete. Which then led her a couple of years later to become the first person of color to win a Grand Slam, the 1956 French Open. And then she became really dominant, because then she won back-to-back Wimbledon and U.S. Open singles championships, as well as doubles championships. That's a lot of people don't realize she was pretty damn good at, excuse my language, she was pretty good at doubles as well, because she dominated and almost has a career Grand Slam on the doubles
In the
side.
doubles side, yeah. I think the year she won Wimbledon, the first year she won doubles also.
Right.
And yeah, she's just a phenomenal player. But also too, when you read about her, there are couple of good books out there on Althea Gibson. But also, I always go back and look at how the press wrote about her and viewed her, and you'll see some of these old articles how they talked about her. They say, well, she's not the most graceful player,
No.
or she plays like a man, or she has a gangly style,
Right.
all these things, but they couldn't take away the artistry of this person, and that she was very athletic. Right. And I would say the first real athlete on the women's side to come in and play this game and dominated on her athleticism.
Yeah.
And she won her first time. She was 30 years old.
And we don't realize it.
We don't
but
realize
they
that,
had to be better.
Yeah, yeah, and continued on for a couple of years. So yeah, she. Black history, sports history, everything, you got it. Women's history, you got everything in Althea Gibson. And if you get a chance, like they have that monument that they have for her at the U.S. Open, and I've heard mixed reviews. I think it's incredible.
It is
to
an
me.
incredible
I
statue.
think it's just in this granite stone, and
Right.
she's coming out of that block, and to me it just makes a statement, about her and the whole,
Yeah, but I mean, even though the statue is nice, we still need to give Althea more attention to understand her significance to the sport.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it wasn't just she wasn't just dynamic in tennis. She also was good enough to play and get her LPGA card in 1960.
First African American.
She's first African American to play
a
golf.
Her card.
And most people don't realize, and I just found this out, she was also a talented vocalist.
Yeah, had an album out.
She had an album out called Althea Gibson Sings. Mm-hmm. Who would have thought in the middle of her career?
Yeah.
She also had she was runner-up at the famous Apollo Theater playing the saxophone. Mm-hmm. And she actually sang before her album for W.C. Handy during a birthday celebration.
Right. Yeah.
So she was multifaceted, multi-talented. Yeah. And again, the story of Althea Gibson needs to be told, and you don't really tell it in a statue outside of Arthur Ashe.
No.
You need to find out what she did, even though she didn't really want the spotlight. She didn't want to be the trailblazer that we talk about now. But she needs to be recognized, and we need to do a better job of that.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, too, all those other things that she had done, it's like a double-edged sword, because as you read about it, the reason why she did all those things is she needed to earn a living.
Right.
Here she came back, two-time Wimbledon champion, it wasn't the U.S. Open then, it was U.S. Nationals champion, French Open titles, all of these titles and stuff. She should have been, even though there wasn't professional tennis at that time, they had it, and she did some barnstorming stuff with the Globetrotters, but she had to earn a living. She struggled, and that's the sad part about it, but she struggled to make a living. And so she did all of these things to try to, to keep a roof over her head and keep fed and have a type of lifestyle. And it had to be hurtful for her to see other players who weren't as talented get connected with commercials and advertisements and get endorsements and that sort of thing that were lucrative for them at the time, and she couldn't get any of that.
Right.
And that's the sad part about it, the reality, and that she would go on and she dies in a nursing home. It's like we marvel, we want to celebrate her, and I agree with you. We need more than that. I wish we could have done more of this when she was alive, when she was on, but we do know now, and I definitely agree with you that they could be done more for her. She had the foundation. I'm not sure what's going on with that now, and definitely trailblazer, pioneer. Just so many things, accolades you can place on her. And, Althea Gibson, there'd probably be no Venus or Serena Williams. I always said if they did a movie, they did a movie of Althea Gibson, they should see if Venus has some acting chops. Just because of her stature and Oh man, watching her, I watched some video of Althea, she's hitting the slice backhand, coming in to hit a pro shot, coming in to hit it, and it looked just like, almost if you look like Venus doing the same thing. Venus is that beautiful approach shot she hit, that slice approach.
Venus is a little bit taller. I think Coco would probably be the player right now.
Yeah, well, Althea was like 5'11", 5'10", so
Coco, well, Venus is tall.
But they'd have to be one-handed players too. Yeah. They'd have to hit that backhand. They'd have to hit that backhand with one hand.
Good point. Well, wait a minute. Hold up. Venus is a two-handed backhand.
Yeah, no, I'm saying to play Althea Gibson, they'd have to hit a one-hand backhand. Right. Yeah, but awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So that sounds like we know what we're talking about when it comes to tennis. So I got a question for you. So how well do you really know tennis? This is one of the things that if I get a chance out in Indian Wells that I'm going to try to ask. So be on the lookout for some segments on from which side do you want.
And I'm going to let you know Ruffin's going to try to stump you.
How well do you know tennis?
He's going to try to stump you and track you down.
I might try to stump you, or I might try to give you a couple of good ones. But here's an example. So here's a question. What women's tennis player has won the most career singles tournaments between Steffi Graf, Serena Williams, Martina Navratilova, and Margaret Court? Which one would you say?
Wow, you say Graf, Venus Williams.
Not Venus, Serena.
Oh, Serena Williams, Graf, Margaret Court, and who else?
Martina Navratilova.
Okay. Well, we know that Steffi Graf had that great 1989?
Right.
Yeah, she won everything. She had the Golden Slam.
Yeah, but throughout, we're
that
talking about
1 year.
Yeah, that was just 1 year.
Okay, that's not over a career.
Over her whole career.
Yeah, well, I would say, you said Martina's in that list too, right? Well, okay. Well, Martina won tournaments, won championships in her 50s. She won a Grand Slam title at 50. Right. And she probably won her first title when she came over as a teenager, 18 or 19. So that's a long gap.
That's a long
almost
time.
Almost 40-year gap. Yeah, I give it to Martina. Educated.
You would be correct because you know tennis. Martina has 177 career singles titles. Now the
titles in there though.
Yeah, the doubles in there, she's got even more.
Oh yeah.
So these are the kinds of questions that I'm going to try to ask out in Indian Wells.
That's gonna
so
be
be on the lookout for how well do you know tennis from the Which Side Do You Want podcast.
Here's a question. What do they do with all those trophies? You ever wonder what does Martina do with all of her trophies?
Interesting. So
got a million.
Not to talk about Martina, but 5 of Althea's trophies are in the Smithsonian American History Museum.
I get
5 of them. Now she won a lot more because she got trophies for singles and doubles, but they are also in Americana history. So
all
that's
of them.
really good.
And you're right, all of them. Because her Wimbledon rep, because they give you the replica, but her Wimbledon trophy was in the old Smithsonian. But then when they moved it over, and they really because it was like in a little obscure place, and I was like, that should be somewhere bigger, prominent. Yeah. So So please go to the Black History Museum if you haven't done so. Please go. Yeah, please go. It's worth it. I just threw that in.
You just threw that in there.
I'm sorry, you got me going. My bad.
That's all right. It's 2025. We're just getting the hang of it.
The nerd just comes out of me on
I
those
got
things,
you.
man. I'm sorry.
Well, that sounds like a lot. So we'll close that out with that notion. So remember to like us on and subscribe to us on our channel. Reach out to us on social media. And again, if you have something to say that you want us to talk about, go ahead and DM us. Let us know. We'll try to get it in on our next podcast. And James, you got anything?
No, hey, it's getting ready. The weather's starting to get warm.
Yes,
this is for tennis players. This is the best time of the year, absolutely. And so I'm looking forward to more warm. We're going to have a little more warm weather coming up, melt that snow away, and let's get on that hard service.
Right. Okay. And as we always say, go hit a tennis ball.